Good morning, students. Welcome to history class. We are reading Feudalism in Medieval Europe. That is chapter 7 of your book. In today's lesson, we will read from section 7.8 to 7.10. Medieval troubadour were musicians who were most popular in southern France and northern Italy during the 11th to the 13th century. They were responsible for cultivating a certain kind of lyrical poetry, highly characterized by intricate meter and rhyming, which was usually romantic in nature. Troubadour were traveling musicians that went from village to village. Some of them traveled abroad to major cities in Europe. These musicians sang songs about chivalry and courtly love. Most of these musicians visited houses and castles of royalty and entertained kings as well as lords and nobles. Not only male, there were female singers too. They were called troubadours. They paved the way for the development of the local languages spoken by the community. How? They chose to sing in those local languages, and you know that more we use one language, the more the language becomes alive. Also, we should remember that these singers moved or went from one place to another place. Thus, they took the language of one region to the other region. This was how they spread the language from one place to another and in turn developed the language. Our next topic is manor system. The manor system was where the majority of people lived during the Middle Ages. Since much of Europe was devastated by war, powerful lords and ladies built fortified castles where they could live along with their respective staffs. This massive plot of land became known as manor. Feudal economy was based on agriculture and village farm. The village farm called the manor was the large estate owned by the lord. So here you can see a picture of a manor system or the manor estate. So it is a piece of land, a very huge land within which there was a complete system. What was there? Its center was the manor house where the lord lived or which he visited when he possessed several manors. There was a garden round the manor house where flower plants, fruit trees, etc. were planted. The manor had a number of cottages where the peasants lived. There was a pasture area where the cattle grazed. The arable land of the manor was divided into 3 fields. One of these was sown in autumn, and the second in spring, and the third field was left fallow. Land was distributed among the peasants on the basis of stripes. So we can say that manor was the basic unit. It was actually the land or the estate owned by the lords. You know from our previous discussions that during this Middle Ages, feudal lords became powerful. And what they owned? They owned these lands. And these lands were self-sufficient. That means whatever the people of this land required, they could make those things by themselves. That's why these lands were called self-sufficient. It had everything. If you can look into this picture minutely, you can see that the building which is marked 1 is actually the manor house, and you see it is guarded with the walls on the 4 sides. And then there is a church, then there are these huts which is marked number 3. These huts are for peasants. And number 9, number 10, you can see these are the places where agriculture or cultivation was done. Then if you can look into this place number which is marked 4, this is the place where they used to store the excess crops that they give as a tax. So you see, in this whole land there were all the things required for the existence of the people who is to live there. And who is to live there? Obviously the feudal lord with his family within the castle, that is the manor house, and the peasants and other workers who used to work for him, they too used to live in this place. Now, feudal economy. Feudal economy was natural economy. Each manor was self-sufficient. It produced almost all necessaries of life. Both the lord and the peasants were hardly required to buy anything except salt and iron, for which they had to go to places producing this and get them in exchange for foodstuffs. So whatever they required, they made it in this place itself. Other than the things that they made, the things they required were salt and iron, for which they used to go outside and give their produces to the people who are selling those things, and they used to take salt and iron. So this was actually the barter system that existed during that time. Now, the peasant's life. In the Middle Ages, peasants were the producing community. That means they were those people who used to produce crops. Their lives were hard. They worked long hours every day just to ensure that their family had a roof over their head and food to eat. So they used to live a very hard life. They used to work very hard all through the day. Why? Just to get the basic necessities of life. And what are those? A house and food to eat. Who used to provide them this? The Lord, for whom they were working. Now, they had to abide by all the commands that their lords used to give them. They have to listen to everything. They could not say anything in return. And they had to stay in that land, in that manorial estate forever. Without the lord's permission, they could not go outside that land. So we can say that they knew almost nothing of the outside world, since they lived, worked and died in the lord's estate and buried in the village churchyard. So from their birth till death, they used to live in one particular land. Okay, the land of their lord. Now, these peasants were compelled to cultivate lands for their lords. They had to perform any service the lords wanted them to perform, such as building or repairing houses or roads. So you see, not only cultivating, but also they had to do anything that their lords used to say them. Okay, for the lands held by them, they had to pay the lord a part of their produce. Okay, so they had to pay whatever they are producing, a part of it has to go to the lord. Along with that, they were expected to pay tithes. What was those? This was a kind of tax, that is 1/10 of their produce they were supposed to give to the church. Special fees were also collected by the church. In a word, the peasants could not defend themselves against the tyranny of the lords. What do we see here? That not only they had to work hard all through the day, but even after working so hard, they had to give numerous taxes. And after paying this numerous fees and payments and taxes, they were left with nothing more than bare means of subsistence. What does that mean? That means after giving away all the taxes, fees and other things that they were forced to pay, they could have only a little amount of food that with which they can fill their stomach. That is the thing, they could not get more than that. Now these peasants used to live in little huts, and their lives were full of utter misery. They lived in crowded 1 or 2 room cottages made of mud and thatch on the top, as you can see in this picture. So within this room only many people had to stay, and their the poverty of such dwellings was a sign of their social scale and their standing in the feudal system. So it shows that they are the poorest section of the society, because the look where lord's castle or the manor house was made out of this stones and other good things which can protect them from foreign attacks. These houses of peasants were made of muds, and within this 1 or 2 dingy rooms they had to stay, the whole family had to stay. Whereas the castle, as you if you can remember from the earlier classes, it's a huge place, it has so many divisions within it. Okay, so this shows the class differentiation, that manor house or feudal castle belongs to the lords, and this one belonged to this peasants, this mud house. Even for their eating habits, there too we can find this differentiation. How? Because for them only vegetables, coarse brown breads, cheese, soup, this were allowed. They could not have anything other than this, like white bread or delicate foods, meats, fowls. They cannot eat these things. Rather, they should eat only vegetables, coarse brown bread, soup and cheese. So in all the phases you can see that there are differences between the lords and the peasants. So we will stop over here today. In the next class we will continue with the same text and hopefully end it. After listening to this video, open your book and read this section from section 7.8 to section 7.10. And if you have any kind of queries, you can mail me your query in the given mail ID only during the class hours. Thank you.